Theodore here, and tonight we cut through the noise with a sharp, unfiltered breakdown of one of the most quietly powerful battlegrounds in modern public life, royal fashion, where every stitch carries meaning, every color signals intent, and every public appearance becomes a coded message broadcast across the world. And at the center of this analysis stand two globally recognized figures, Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Meghan Markle. Two women who entered the same institution, operated under the same spotlight, had access to the same level of designers, stylists, and influence, yet walked away projecting entirely different images. And the question driving this entire conversation is simple but loaded. Why does one come across as effortlessly modern, composed, and strategically relatable, while the other often appears like she is pushing too hard, resisting structure, and ultimately creating a visual narrative that feels disconnected, inconsistent, and at times even chaotic? And to answer that, we have to dismantle the myths, decode the rules, and expose the mechanics behind royal dressing that most people never even realize exist, starting with one of the biggest misconceptions that gained traction in recent years, a claim publicly associated with Meghan herself during her appearance in a widely discussed Netflix series released in December 2022. Where she suggested that royal women are essentially restricted from wearing the same color as senior members like Queen Elizabeth II, or even each other during group events, framing her preference for neutral tones as a strategic necessity rather than a stylistic choice. But when you actually examine how royal dressing functions in practice, that claim collapses under even minimal scrutiny, because not only is there no formal or informal rule prohibiting shared colors, there is extensive visual evidence across decades showing coordinated palettes, intentional matching, and even deliberate uniformity during public appearances, which completely contradicts the narrative she presented. And what actually happens behind the scenes is far more practical and far less restrictive, as communication does occur, not to prevent matching, but to avoid clashing, with aides ensuring that color combinations in group settings create visual harmony rather than discord, because the royal family operates not just as individuals, but as a collective visual institution, and the optics matter, the photographs matter, the historical record matters. And when you look at events like Trooping the Color or major public ceremonies, you can see clear examples of synchronized color choices, including instances where Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Queen Elizabeth II appeared in similar shades of blue, reinforcing unity rather than competing for visual distinction. And this immediately reframes the conversation, because instead of being constrained, royal women are actually expected to participate in a kind of visual diplomacy, where clothing becomes a tool of communication, not just self-expression. And that brings us directly into the strategic brilliance of Catherine's approach, which has evolved significantly over the past decade into something that blends tradition with modern relatability in a way that feels seamless rather than forced. And one of the clearest examples of this is her use of what is often referred to as flag dressing, a deliberate practice where she incorporates the colors of a host nation's flag during her official visits, subtly signaling respect, awareness, and cultural alignment without ever needing to say a word. Whether it's echoing the red and white of Denmark during a 2022 visit, or choosing tones that reflect national identity when welcoming global leaders like Emmanuel Macron. And these choices are not random. They are calculated, thoughtful, and deeply aligned with the expectations of her role. And beyond diplomacy, there is also the matter of visibility, a principle strongly associated with Queen Elizabeth II, who famously embraced bold, monochrome outfits to ensure she could be easily seen in large crowds, a strategy summarized in the widely cited idea that she wanted people to be able to say, "I saw the Queen." And Catherine has not only adopted this principle, but expanded on it, integrating symbolic meaning into her color choices, using blue to project stability, green to suggest growth, white for renewal, and red to convey strength and confidence, effectively layering emotional and psychological cues into her public image. And this is where the contrast with Meghan becomes particularly stark, because while Catherine uses color as a language, Meghan's approach during her time as a working royal often appeared disconnected from this system, favoring neutral tones like beige, camel, gray, and black to such an extent that it became not just a preference, but a defining characteristic. And while neutrals are not inherently problematic, their overuse in a context where color carries institutional meaning can create the impression of disengagement, especially when those choices stand out against coordinated group palettes, as seen in multiple high-profile appearances, including Prince Louis's christening, where a soft pastel theme was established, yet Meghan's olive tone disrupted the visual cohesion, or during Christmas events, where others embraced traditional burgundy hues, while she opted for unrelated shades. And these moments, whether intentional or not, contributed to a narrative of misalignment, reinforcing the perception that she was either unwilling or unable to integrate into the visual language of the royal family. And this perception is further amplified when you consider the cultural weight assigned to certain colors within royal tradition, particularly black, which is typically reserved for mourning or remembrance, making its use outside those contexts rare and therefore powerful, a rule that enhances the emotional impact when it does appear. But when black is worn frequently, as Meghan often did, that impact is diluted, transforming what should be a strong symbolic statement into something routine and less meaningful. And again, this is not about strict rules, but about understanding the underlying logic of the system, something Catherine appears to grasp intuitively, using restraint and intention to maintain the potency of each visual choice, while Meghan's more individualistic approach, which might work effectively in a different context, struggled within the highly structured environment of royal representation. And this brings us to a critical point that often gets overlooked in these discussions, which is that royal fashion is not primarily about personal taste. It is about role performance, about embodying a position that carries historical, cultural, and political significance. And success in that role depends on aligning personal style with institutional expectations in a way that feels authentic rather than forced. And this is where Catherine's evolution becomes particularly noteworthy, because she has managed to modernize royal dressing without breaking its core principles, introducing relatability through accessible silhouettes, high street pieces, and subtle repetition of outfits, while still maintaining the polish, coordination, and symbolic awareness that the role demands, creating a balance that resonates with the public, making her appear both aspirational and approachable. Whereas Meghan's attempt to modernize the same system leaned more towards rejecting its conventions altogether, which may have been intended as a statement of independence, but ultimately created friction rather than transformation, because without engaging with the existing framework, there is no foundation to build on. And this dynamic extends beyond color into other aspects of presentation, including fit, tailoring, and overall finish, areas where consistency plays a major role in shaping perception. And while both women had access to top-tier designers, the execution often told different stories, with Catherine's outfits typically appearing meticulously tailored and cohesive, reinforcing a sense of control and precision, while Meghan's looks at times appeared less structured, contributing to the broader narrative of imbalance. And when you combine all these elements, color strategy, coordination, symbolism, fit, and context, you begin to see how royal fashion operates as a complex system of visual communication, where success is not measured by individuality alone, but by the ability to navigate and leverage that system effectively. And this is where the practical takeaways for a general audience become surprisingly relevant. Because while most people are not operating within a royal framework, the underlying principles still apply. Understanding how color influences perception, recognizing the impact of coordination in group settings, appreciating the power of restraint, and aligning personal style with context are all transferable skills that can enhance everyday presentation, whether in professional environments, social situations, or public appearances. And perhaps the most important lesson here is that style is not just about what you wear, but what your choices communicate, often subconsciously, to those around you. And in that sense, the contrast between Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Meghan Markle becomes more than just a comparison of wardrobes. It becomes a case study in how understanding or misunderstanding the rules of a system can shape public perception in profound ways. And as we continue to watch how both women evolve in their respective paths, one within the royal institution and one outside of it, the visual narratives they create will remain a powerful lens through which their roles, choices, and identities are interpreted. And that's the real story here, not just facts.